As you may know, we have the scriptural calendar and the scriptural clock. You can also get your free PDF download. If you go into the description section, you'll find links to whether if you want to get the PDF download for free or if you want to get the desktop calendar for this year. You can order that not for free, but you can order that online. The links below, as well as you can have the wall calendar to hang up on your wall with all the scriptural dates. You have a complete understanding of when the festivals are to be kept. These are all the dates. Let me make my screen a bit bigger. Sorry. And if you want to get even the larger study, they're all study almanacs, but this one is a lot bigger for those who maybe have issues with their eyes. Again, a very large calendar, high quality. This is the mat. Again, if you want to get anything, the links are below. And again, you get a free PDF download of what you see as well for those who can't purchase the almanac. Let's move through. Now, what I want to talk about today is a particular thing that I've seen. It's like a trick and a scheme, and I call it like monkey in the middle. And in this area here, you're going to see that there's these top 10 tricks of calendars and errors that people are not paying attention to, and it deals with slicing things in the middle and making heads tails. And I'm going to cover these 10 things. The Roman days and dates change in the middle of the night. They switch the clock to brainwash us from the true clock, flipping it upside down. Some try to make the original 24-hour day begin from the middle of the 24-hour day in the morning. So they'll say a day is only 12 hours, or that the 24-hour day begins from the morning, from creation. Some try to limit a calendar date to only 12 hours. And many people begin the scriptural calendar with the middle of creation week, with the sun, moon, and stars when they were originated. As well, the whole world begins the seasons from the middle of Jah's true seasons by using the equinoxes and solstices. The Gregorian calendar was introduced in the middle of Jah's 28-year cycle. They even falsely count chronology of years from the middle of Jah's 7,000-year cycle with the use of BC, AD, BCE, and CE, and we'll explain all of these things. And even the Earth is moved from being the center. Now it's the sun with the solar system. And number 10, the orientation of maps, how they move the east to the middle, and they kind of supplant it, and they put the north at the top when the east should have been at the top. Now, a lot of these things are going to be new information for some, but these are in particular the most popular I find, and I'm not going to talk about months, but the most popular errors and tricks that are here. So you can pick a day, any day, and this is what the devil wants us to do. You know, there are people that keep the 24-hour day period from the evening first and then the morning, 12 hours each. And there are those who keep it from the light to the evening, 12 hours each, still a 24-hour day Sabbath. And then there are those who only deal with the morning or light only, a 12-hour Sabbath. So our stance up here is the evening and the morning, and we believe these other ones are incorrect. But again, this lets you know right from the beginning, the devil is attacking the 24-hour day. And if we don't get this straight from the beginning, then we can go into all different directions. So I do know, again, there's many people who see the 24-hour day, and in particular the Sabbath, in these other fashions, and we don't agree with that. And we speak about that on our channel, but I'm not going to get too much into it, but just highlight a couple of things that are important. Now, when we look at the first creation, first day, we have 12 hours of darkness, and then we have 12 hours of light. This is the first creation day. And you'll find all of these words in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. You'll find night, darkness, and evening. And you'll find day, light, and morning, all in that same 24-hour day for those who want to make it just a 12-hour day. 2 Corinthians 4 reads, For God, El, Jah, Yah, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness. So light came from darkness. And that's the main thing that I think in this area here, many people are in error because they say that creation began with light. So when he said, let there be light, that's when creation began. And they ignore the first 12 hours, or they don't see it as a time period. And some even, just disclude it altogether. But we should know that darkness was first, and the Most High made darkness. In the beginning, Genesis 1, it reads, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And Jah said, let there be light, and there was light. So darkness was first, it's preeminent. In 2nd Ezra 69, verses 39, it reads, and when and then was the spirit and darkness and silence were on every side. The sound of man's voice was not yet formed. Then commandest thou a fair light to come forth of thy treasures, that thy work may appear. So we can see clearly here that the Most High, he was working. A lot of people say he wasn't working, but if his spirit was hovering over the waters, what do you think he was doing? He was creating his main throne, his kingdom, the heavenly kingdom. And he made his heavenly kingdom in darkness. And then when he said, let there be light, the angels came alive and they began to inhabit eternity and be with the Most High from there on in. So we can see again, it says that, silence and darkness was first. And then it says that thy work may appear. So the Most High was working in darkness. And remember, the Most High says that in Isaiah 45, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, Jah, Yah, do all these things. So the Most High created darkness. When we think of nothing, it's easy to think of darkness, but the Most High made darkness, and he actually dwells in darkness. 2 Samuel 22, it reads, and he made darkness pavilions about him, dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. Psalms 18. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the sky. So we get an understanding clearly that darkness was first. He dwelt in darkness. He created darkness, and he was working in darkness. Again, if we get this foundation wrong, then you're going to find it's going to go off in all different type of calendar understandings. So pick a clock, any clock. And we speak about the clock a lot. I do got to highlight this because they've even changed days in the middle of the night. They call 12 o'clock midnight, and they ignore the beginning of days and mornings, which is at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. And when we look at the true scriptural clock, Jah's 24-hour days begin from the evening. So do his 12-hour light and night cycles. And as you can see on this clock, we have Jah's hours in the middle and Babylon's hours on the outside. And going first, the first hour would be 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. And this is the true function of how the clock should go. And a lot of people would say, hey, it doesn't even matter. But if it didn't matter, why would they change it? And the scriptural clock goes perfectly with the Holy Scriptures. Again, when you look at the true scriptural clock, the modern days and dates begin at midnight, which is wrong. That's the middle of the night or the middle of the day, but they say it's the beginning of morning. So after midnight, it becomes 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. But again, that makes no sense because it's dark and it was just the middle of the night. How could it change the morning? Night didn't even end. So scriptural 24-hour days and dates begin in the evening, and this is how it's supposed to be. Mornings begin at sunrise around 6 a.m. And depending on the season, the sun may rise or set earlier or later than 6 p.m. But nonetheless, on the average, it's a 12-hour day-night cycle on the earth for all countries, whether you go to Antarctica, the North Pole, Jerusalem, the Caribbean. On average, there's 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night throughout the year. And bless up to all those who are, tuning in right now. Alton says, yes, that's a lot of work put in this, bro. Very nice. Thank you, Brother Alton. Let's continue moving. All right. So now we have to pick a beginning, any beginning, pick a card, any card. And this is what the devil is offering. He doesn't mind everybody having different calendars because he doesn't want anybody to see the true calendar. So even the beginning of time and how calendars even start from the get-go, because we covered day one, but you can see obviously that day will evolve to 7-day weekly cycles. So if you get day one wrong, your weekly cycle will be wrong. You'll have a beginning of calendars in error too. So let's take a look. We'll see that the scriptural calendar begins in Genesis 1, verses 1 through 5. That's the first day of creation, from the first day. And now it's the foundation of all cycles of time. And when you take a look really at that day and you just use your wisdom and knowledge, you'll see that the first day, it's the first day of the 7-day weekly cycle or Sabbath cycle of time. Jah was counting his days and his weekly cycle right from the beginning. We'll see that it's also the first day of the first month called Abib. It's the first day of the first season, which is spring, or also known as latter rains in the scripture. It's the first day of the 12-month year and the first day of this 7,000-year cycle of time. So it's important, again, to emphasize this because, again, the first day of creation we teach is the beginning of the calendar, but other people teach differently. And for the most part, the majority of people teach differently. You have your 7-day creation cycle right here in front of you. And we know that the Most High began counting time from day one. Then he did day 2, and he counted to day 4. He made the sun, moon, and stars. And then day 7 is 7 days from the first day of creation. So, I mean, even a 12-year-old couldn't know how to count to 7 and not mix that up. But it seems like in the world, though, this has become a great confusion for people because they're not respecting the Most High's count. He said the evening and the morning were the first day. There was no sun there made at that time. He is that light. There's no moon or stars. The earth wasn't even formed. But he was counting days before he even brought the sun, moon, and stars into play. And you'll see that many people, when they talk about calendars, if it's the Enoch calendar, if it's mostly lunar calendars and lunisolar calendars out there, they like to begin the count from day 4. And they say, this is when the Most High brought forth the calendar. But I mean, he brought forth the calendar on day 1. It should be very, very clear. We know how to count. John never said, anytime here, this is a resetting of time, because we know that 3 days after the sun, moon, and stars were made, that it's the Sabbath. It's not, 7 days from the sun, moon, or stars that way. And the sun, moon, and stars, again, were not made on the first day of creation. There was no sun, moon, or stars. So those things have no, foundation in time. They do operate for signs, seasons, days, and years, but they operate within Jah's holy 7-day weekly cycle. It's the foundation. So we begin from day 1, not from day 4. Now, one thing you'll see is that there's people who, again, mix up the count. And you may know and heard of lunar Sabbatarians, where they keep, a 7-day Sabbath according to the lunar cycles. But a lot of people don't know how they start their calendar. And I think if you get to the foundation of how they start their calendar, it's on shaky, shaky grounds. Now, when you take a look here, I just showed you the 7 days of creation. And they recognize this, but what they do is they put, a day, they call it a new month day or a new moon day, and that's a day that happened before creation. So I really want you to hear what I'm saying. They're saying there was a day before creation, right? That's called the new moon day, and the moon wasn't even made, or the sun, moon, and stars, but they call it a new moon day, and they split up the creation day into 2 and say, the darkness part was 1 24-hour day and the light was another day. And that's when he began creating, when he said, let there be light. But we showed that, that is wrong. So can you imagine? So when you're looking at this, on your screen here, I want you to really take a look. This is day 1 of creation. But what they say is that before creation, there was a new month day or a new moon day. So they say this is the beginning of the month and the year. And then they'll say that day 2 of this month is really, it's day 1 of creation is day 2, and so on and so forth. And then when they get to the 7th day, they say that is the Sabbath day for them, because they're counting 7 days from here. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. and they call, which is to them would be day 8, the Sabbath. So you can see that the foundation is faulty. There cannot be a day before creation. And that's what they do. I mean, really, if you just look at it, new moon day or new solar day or new stars day would be on day 4. I mean, they could come up with something even better. Say, hey, what? The moon was dark for 3 days and then it began to shine on the day after the Sabbath or something. And even then, that wouldn't make sense. But I don't know how they can count to the Sabbath day and put a day in front of it. That's very, very suspect. And that shouldn't work. So when we're looking at the first week of creation, again, we can count with our hands, and we have a mind, and we know that the first day of creation was a bib 1. That's when the calendar started. Week 1, month 1, season 1, and year 1. Then the second day would be the second day of the month, the second day of the week 1, second day of the season, going on so forth. And as you can see, going through, you'll get to day 7 of creation, and that would be a bib 7, the end of week 1. We're in month 1, season 1, and year 1, and it's the Sabbath. You don't start counting from here and say this is when you begin time. Again, I know many people do it that way, but that's just ignoring the Most High's scriptural count. He's very clear on what he's doing here. Let's continue. Now, as well, we can see that on this chart here, this is a chart of chronology. And chronology is really the understanding of counting from the beginning of time until the end of time. And so in this time period, we have 7,000 years. I'm not going to get into that, but many people understand this count, and many people have a similar understanding that we're in the 6,000th year, and then we disagree on exactly what we teach, that we're in 6,225, which is 2,025 years away from when the Messiah was born. But when we're looking at this chart here, year 1 should be year 1. The year after that should be year 2. And we count and we go through. And it's a very simple understanding. We know how to count and go through. But what happens with Babylon is that they splice time in the middle. So they have what you call BC, and they have AD, and BC counts backwards in time. And when you count backwards in time with their BC, year 1 is equivalent to the year 4199 BC. And as we move forward in time, 1 AD, that's after BC, is the year 4201. And now in AD, they count forward. And again, this is where we are in time, and we're going through for this 7,000-year cycle. Let me make it a bit clearer. This is what Babylon does. So in the beginning here, some use a year 0, some don't. So they count backwards from here, year 0 or 1, and they count backwards. And as you can see, time is moving ahead. 2018 BC, going further. And the reason for this, family, is, you might not think, hey, that's just their way of doing things. But when you do it this way, you could never find what is the true beginning of time. Because you hear people talk about 8,000 BC, 10,000 BC, 100,000 BC, because you can keep going back and back, and there's no beginning of time. And so that, causes people to, look at time in a different way. But they're counting backwards, and then they begin to count forwards. Again, this can become all confusing. And yes, you can study it to learn it, but simply put, it's not needed. You can count straight from 1 all the way through. But nonetheless, this is where we live in Babylon. So you notice again, they're changing time where? In the middle. I remember when we went back here, the weekly cycle, when are they changing time again? They're changing or beginning their time in the middle of the creation week, right? That way, in the middle. And then also when they're changing time on the clock, they're using, again, the middle, the midnight. Are you starting to see a pattern here? This is the pattern, right? And it's being exposed because, this is how they do things. They just put it in the middle. And when it's in the middle, it can keep people, saying, okay, we can deal with it. But really, it's a trick, and it's throwing you off. So again, this is a trick here. And when they use the word BC, it's before Christ, or BCE means before the common era, because some don't want to deal with religion. And Anno Domini means the year of the Lord. I used to think that it meant after death, but it means the year of the Lord or when he was born. But it's so strange that people have the Messiah born. If you go check out when he was born, they'll say something like uh, 5, 6 AD, 3 AD. And how could he be, if this means before Christ, how can he, and that's when he's going to come, how could he be like born 3, 4 years after? Some have him even born in 2 BC. How could he be born before Christ? So when we deal with it, we use year 1, so to speak, and we use year 0 right from there. So year 1 is the first year that the Messiah was born, and you count 2,225 years, and here we are ahead. But when they do their thing, it's confusing. Can you hear me? Alton says it's a 6. If anybody else can't hear me, please type in a 6 or a 7. Wait a second. Okay. Maybe again there's something on your end, Brother Alton. I'm not sure. Bless up, Brother John. All right, so let's move through. Now, again, this chart looks very confusing, but it's 2 charts. Up top is Jah's chart, and down low is how Babylon reckons time. And Jah counts chronology from year 1 through the year 7,000 and beyond. So again, we know that he's counting time this way. Then when it gets to the middle, they call it year, well, we can call it year 0 or year 1, depends on how you want to reckon time. And then again, it goes up. So you can see the corruption, them going backwards and forwards. Again, when are they splicing this thing here? Right in the middle. All right. Now you can pick a Sabbath, any Sabbath that you want here. Sabbaths seem like it's being a great controversy. And of course, this is what the devil's attacking, the first holy day of creation, right? So he's going to go at that. He went at the first day of creation, try to confuse that. And then, of course, he's going to take it to the 7th day because it's the first holy day. So you have many people either saying, there's no Sabbath, or every day's the Sabbath, or the Messiah, they say Jesus is their Sabbath, or they'll have different understandings. And I want to take a quick look at that as well. As we know very clearly, it's from day 1 to day 7 is the 7th-day Sabbath. And when you're looking at this foundation, what you see here, all of these 7 columns, and there are 52 rows. So it goes from 1 to 52. 52 times 7 is 364. We have day 1, the first day of the year, and then we have here day 364. What I'm showing you here is just that the Most High is counting weeks. You understand? And the 7th-day Sabbath is the foundation. It's not counting Sabbath from anything else, from the middle of the week or from, the 8th day or anything of that nature. The weekly cycle is unbroken because Jah made this 7 days of creation and he sanctified it as holy. And so he's not going to get rid of it and tell his people not to keep this day or even put in the commandments. He puts in the words, remember it. I mean, it's the only commandment that starts with the phrase "remember." So you see that people have forgotten about it, or they've did something wrong on it, or as I would say, the devil has just corrupted it. But when you're looking at again the weekly cycle, it's very plain. It's a pattern. So some people, just like how they have a different understanding of creation, as we have it, we keep the Sabbath from the evening until the next evening, which includes the evening and the morning. The evening ends the day, of course, so it goes from evening till evening. That's our stance, and others do it from morning till morning. At the end of the night would be the morning, and others, as you know, I said before, they do a 12-hour Sabbath. And there's a big argument about that, but we've shown clearly from day 1 of creation that darkness was first. And if that's the first day of evening and morning, then the rest of the days are going to be evening and morning as we read. And some people think because it doesn't say on the seventh day. It doesn't say the evening and morning. So that means the Sabbath day it's a continual symbolism of an eternal rest. Like, I mean, he said it 6 times, evening and morning. And then when it comes to the seventh day, because you don't see evening and the morning, we don't know how long that day was, or you want to say it's 12 hours, or you don't know when it began. To me, that's, kind of silly that way. How much more evidence do we need? And I mean, if you're going to start your days from the morning, then why didn't the Messiah or the Most High just say the morning and the evening were the first day? But we don't see that. And so again, there's lots of folly around this area. So as we keep it, the first day of creation started with the 12-hour night period, and then continually going through evening and morning, and the seventh day is a dark period. For those, again, who disagree, they'll say that when he said, let there be light, that was the beginning. And that might be for some a 12-hour day, and they'll just count these 12 hours, the light part, and they won't count the night. Others keep the 24-hour, and they'll keep the night part. So they'll go from the morning, and then after the night, when they wake up again, their Sabbath is over. Again, we don't agree with this at all. And this foundation is important because it's almost like an opposite, a flip. Again, what's being attacked here is the 24-hour day. And how's it getting attacked? In the middle, right? Take a look. I mean, it's slicing, it's saying, hey, forget about the first 12 hours. We're going to start it right from the light part. So that's, when you take a look, again, this middle tactic is everywhere, and it's being utilized. And hopefully, those with a candid mind are catching on to what's going on. Which leads us to this more popular becoming lunar Sabbaths, where people are keeping the Sabbath day, 7-day Sabbath, again, like I said, with the moon. And I don't have much time to deal with them, but this is how they do their calendar. So every new moon, becomes a non-working day, and this is the beginning of their day. So you don't work or anything, and then they have 7 days, and then on that seventh day, they're gonna keep a Sabbath, and you can see that it's 8 days, and they profess that you keep the Sabbath on the 8th, the 15th, 22nd, and 29th. And so when they go through this, it looks okay first from the beginning, even though this is a shaky start. But once you start to get into it, again, remembering how they start things from the beginning of time, but also when you get into it now, this is where you can really see their trick. And for those who don't even know about the lunar Sabbath, this is what they teach. So let's say the new moon was on a Sunday. So that's a non-working day where the X is. As we go through the week, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 working days. Then they'll keep the Sabbath on the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd, and the 29th. And now, if there's 30 days in their months, because when you look at their calendar, they have 29 and 30 days. That's how they do it: 29, 30, 29, 30. When you come to a 30-day month, what they say is after this Sabbath, so you got one Sabbath, another Sabbath, another Sabbath, another Sabbath, and these Sabbaths, notice, can fall on a Sunday, or they can fall on a Tuesday, or they can fall on a Wednesday. Every month it's different. But what I want to say is that this 30th day in their month is counted as a non-day or a non-working day, because the moon will be dark or something of that nature. So they don't consider it. Yet the sun is still rising and setting, and it's still a day, but they don't count it. And it's really weird. So they don't count this day. And then, because it's the end of the month, now they're beginning of their next month, which has 29 days. That first day of the month, again, is a non-working day. And then they count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then again 7. This is when they had their Sabbath. So now the Sabbaths will be on a Tuesday, which will be on their calendar the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. But what's weird is that they call these days non-working days, but you're messing up the weekly cycle. Because, all right, let's look. Here's their last Sabbath on the 29th. So let's count to their next Sabbath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's their next 7th-day Sabbath of their moon, right? That way. So you can see, 9 days, 2 extra days in between. And the Most High clearly said, you work for 6 days, you have the 7th day. And just because the new month might come in within the weekly cycle, that's Jah giving you time off. So some people will say, well, no, you have to count again from it because it's messing up the 6-day weekly cycle. No, God's is giving that special time off. It's still a part of the weekly cycle count. You can't break the 7-day weekly cycle count. So again, now they get to their 29th. So this is their first month. They get to their 29th. That's a Sabbath for them. So the next day is a new moon, new month. You don't work that day. It's a day off for them. So then they count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now you can see that their 7-day Sabbath will be on a Wednesday that year, that month, 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th. And then we go further. But again, let's go back here. This was their last Sabbath. So this Sabbath, let's see if we can count 6 days between Sabbaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, but this is their Sabbath here. We have to go 8. So now we have, when there's 29 days, there's 8 months between Sabbaths at the month end. And when there's 30 days, there's 9 days between Sabbaths. So you see how that works? It interrupts the weekly cycle, and they just invent something called non-transitional days, non-working days, and then create this thing called New Moon Day. But that's all folly. I mean, the first day of the scriptural months is a holy day, so to speak. John never says it's holy, but he gives some special attention to it. And we can see that many stores or people would not work during those times. But you don't see in the Torah where he says the first month is holy. But nonetheless, it still can be recognized. But you can see the folly here, with their calendar. Again, we can count very easily. The first day of creation began at evening. Remember, this is our first week, Abib 7. Then after the 7th day, you're going to have day 8, right? Which is the first day of the next week. And you'll see that the next Sabbath would be on the 14th. And this is from creation, and this is the first month of Abib. And then after the 14th, you get the 15th. Well, there's 7 days of unleavened bread. And then that Sabbath would be the 21st. And then we have the waving of the sheaf. And we have at the next Sabbath, because we can count. So when we look at this model, simply again, anybody knows how to count. From creation, we can see that creation doesn't begin on day 4. The Most High was counting his 7-day cycle. And when he got to the 7th day, he didn't reset it or do anything different. The day after that became the first day of the week of a next 7-day count. And obviously, the next month would be month 2. And then that would be week number 5, right? I hope this makes sense. All right, pick a season, any season. Like we teach, the equinox calendars are Baalim calendars. So it doesn't matter what calendar one wants to use. If it's utilizing the equinox as the beginning of spring with lunar cycles, we consider that in great, great error. Great error. And we find, and I found, especially since there's a lot of calendar talk going out there with Truth Unedited speaking about calendars, when you go through the comments, many, many different calendars. And of course, we may be one of them. But one thing you'll see is that mostly all of them deal with the equinox, and then many will deal with the lunar months. But the calendar of Enoch or the Enochian calendar or the Jubilee calendar that's out there that people follow, that's a little bit more firmer than the lunar solar calendar months. But again, there's a difference in it. It's not perfect, but it has an accuracy when it's dealing with 364 days. But again, there's a lot of mix-up going on here. So again, we know about these 3 types of calendars. I talk about them all the time, asthermal, and the one that many people don't know about, again, is the solar seasons. It's something that it's out there, and the Most High's scriptural seasons are also aligned with the solar seasons and also aligned with the scriptural, agricultural, and rainy and summer seasons in the land of Israel, the land of Canaan. And I want to show you a quick 1-2 minute video. I like to show this because I think people got to know about this solar season, because when we say that we begin the spring or the year in February, people say, what are you talking about? But there's lots of information about the year beginning in February in the scriptures, as well as, traditionally and historically. And again, I always want to show this quick video. It's called solar seasons. Yes.
Last time we checked out astronomical and meteorological seasons, but this time we will check out solar seasons. Solar seasons are actually based on insolation or solar radiation, where the solstices and equinoxes are viewed as the midpoints of the season. Solar seasons change about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of the meteorological seasons and about 6 to 7 weeks ahead of the astronomical seasons. And the best way to explain the seasons when it comes to solar is to look at a chart here involving the insolation at various latitudes in the northern hemisphere, starting off with the equator, 30 degrees north, 60 degrees north, and 90 degrees north. And we're mostly going to focus on the 30, 60, and 90 degree latitudes here when it comes to the increasing and decreasing amounts. So let's first start off here when it comes to spring, which consists of increasing insolation or solar radiation. And that's depicted here in the green for the months of February, March, and April. And you can already tell that those three areas, those three lines are actually beginning to increase. And it's with the equinox being at the midpoint of that solar spring. Now we move on into summer, where we see the months of maximum insolation or solar radiation, and that's depicted here in the red, and that happens throughout the months of May, June, and July. Now we start going in the opposite direction here as we start going into autumn here, and that actually begins in August, September, and October as we start seeing decreasing amounts of insolation or solar radiation. So you can already see how it's already hit its maximum in the summer, and now it's beginning to see that downward trend. And then lastly, in the blue there, we have winter, where it's the minimum insolation, and that actually happens in the months of November, December, but also in the months of January. And that is all when it comes to solar seasons.
Okay, so as we've seen, solar seasons are true. They do exist, and many people don't know about them, but it shows you clearly that, the seasons begin spring in February, summer in May, autumn in August, and winter in November. And this is true. And it also was showing us that the middle of the scriptural seasons are the equinoxes and solstices. They're not the beginning. Again, this is a great revelation, because like I said, everybody, believes that the spring equinox is the trigger for the season, or the solstice is the trigger for summer, but they're not. These are based upon pagan astronomical, observations. And yes, they exist, but it's a poor use, or using the sun, moon, and stars in an improper way. And it's based, again, like I said, on pagan worship. So it's saying, again, the whole world, again, uses spring equinox as the beginning of spring and then winter. But when you look at things, especially when it comes to winter is supposed to be, the shortest day of the year. But right after that, it starts to increase, and light time gets bigger. And then when you get to the summer solstice, that's supposed to be the longest day of the year when they start summer. But right after that, the light is getting shorter. Again, you can look these things up yourself. The word midsummer, the middle of summer, or the summer solstice around June 21st. So again, it's letting you know, again, the middle of summer, is a true thing. And it was anciently considered the summer solstice, not the beginning of summer. And the same could be said for winter, the middle of winter, the winter solstice around December 22nd, right? It's occurring in the middle of winter. Now, for those who already, know, this almanac and calendar, they've heard these things many times. But again, the world doesn't know these things, and these are great revelations. Again, when you start to put an understanding of the seasons on Jah's true year, especially the Israel seasons, you'll see that, again, the equinoxes and the solstices are the midpoint of the seasons. And they're based upon, again, remember, solar, right? The solar seasons, the amount of daylight. So we have the daylight amount hours here, 11, 12, 13. And as it increases and goes to the solstice, it's 14 hours. And this is, the longest period of the most sunlight. And then as we start to decrease, then we have the lowest period. And this is the greater increase. You can see from February, it starts to go up, because it's 11 hours of daylight, 12 and 13. And if you look at Adar, January, which is the coldest, the wettest, and the shortest kind of amount of hours, with the solstice, it's 10 hours. So in February, it increases. Now, the vernal equinox around March 20th is used as a baseline for all astronomy, astrology, and pagan calendars. It's the baseline for their astronomical mathematical calculations. It's the baseline for pagan Christianity's setting of Easter, along with the false Aprilis Passover on the Babylonian lunisolar calendar. And there's many, many other evil things associated with it. Its use is not revealed knowledge from Jah, but from the devil. It's an effort in intellectual vanity of which he is the father of all lies. Satan has deceived most of mankind into using this astronomical event, of which many people call a sign of the beginning of spring, but it's not. When you look at Jah's true scriptural seasons, and this is for this year here, you also see the mid seasons. And the beginning of the true year is February 9th, 2025. And as you move through time, the spring equinox is mid-spring, right? And this is when their false spring begins. We go through May 9th, true summer. Then we have the summer solstice. False summer begins, but it's midsummer. Same thing with autumn here. Then we have mid-autumn, which is at the equinox. That's when false autumn begins. Then we have winter beginning in November, and then December, the solstice is mid-winter here, where false winter begins, and it goes back around. So this chart demonstrates very clearly, the understanding of what I'm trying to put forward. Now, many people will disagree, but this is something you can look into yourself, and wouldn't be surprising. Like I said, I don't think there's any other calendar, that's putting forth these truths just like this. So it's good to look into these things. Again, when you look on it through, the 12-month yearly calendar, 1, 2, 3, going through to 12, we have our 4 seasons. We can see that the equinoxes and solstices, again, are the middle of the seasons, not the beginning. Again, another calendar of the Most High's Almanac showing us the equivalency of the Gregorian months, how many days are in each month, and what day of the week each month starts on. And also the division of the rainy seasons. We have the latter rains, then we have the summer season of 6 months, and then we have the early rains. And these are the names for them if you were to group them into 4. So, excuse me, what have we seen again now? Another splicing in the middle, right? Here's that pattern again I'm talking about. Again, from the clock, the 24-hour day to the weekly cycle, we see again, once again, this middle pattern of when time is being spliced. You start to see the connection here. Now, also, when we're getting into things and you're talking about equinoxes and solstices, just so you know, they have a false equator on the earth. And the equator, when you look it up, they'll tell you it's an imaginary line, but they use it to divide the earth from northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And then what they do is they project that imaginary line into outer space on a celestial sphere. This here round thing is a celestial sphere because, they believe in the globe. So when they project in outer space, they have it as a globe where they project the stars and the movement of the sun and the moon. And of course, they use the North Pole as their main governor, right? They say that's what is up. But this is, again, another trick of switching things from the middle. But notice that they're using the equator, imaginary line, for the celestial equator, as you can see. Let me make it bigger, sorry. Celestial equator. So we have the equator on Earth, the celestial equator in the blue going around, and then they have their points of the vernal equinox, and different understandings of how it goes. But notice that even with their map, they put north at the top because it's governed also with this north here that's dealing with equinoxes, the equator, and the celestial equator. But this, how they have the maps oriented, is false. So, pick a direction, any direction. Modern Babylon's false compass bearings have north at the top, south at the bottom, west and east. But it wasn't always that way, right? North isn't the top middle of the earth. When you look at the ancient and scriptural compass bearings, you'll see that east should be at the top, where the rising of the sun is. It rises from the east and sets in the west. The moon rises in the east and sets in the west, and the stars rise in the east and set in the west. And also, there's a scriptural understanding about the Most High's temple and these directions. North and south are on the sides. You'll see here that south is on the right side of east, and north is on the left side. Jerusalem, we see from the scriptures, is Middle Earth, right next to the Mediterranean Sea, but is also in the midst of all the nations. Now, for scriptural support, I want you to take a look at Ezekiel 43, where it says, "Afterward he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looketh toward the east. And behold, the glory of El of Israel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like the noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory." So again, this east giving us a kind of a prime direction. Verse 4, "And the glory of Jah came into the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect," which means face, the forward part, "is toward the east." So you notice that Jah's house, his temple, the gate is towards the east. So when you walk in his temple, you walk in from the east. Ezekiel 47 reads, "Afterward he brought me again unto the door of the house, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward." So notice that the waters are coming out eastward. For the forefront, the prospect of the house stood toward the east, and waters came down from under the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. 2 Chronicles 4:10, "And he set the sea," that's something in the temple, like a big basin, "on the right side of the east end over against the south." So you can get a good understanding here of what's going on. Again, remember I said that south is at the right side, east is at the main, at the top. And when we look up that word right here, what was it again? Prospect or forefront. They both mean the same thing. Prospect, forefront, panim, the face or extreme front, right? The face, right? In front of. The forefront means the extreme front. So that means the front of the Most High's temple was facing towards the east, as you see right here on the screen. So the east would be at the top. You would walk into the temple from the east because in the tabernacle or the temple, it's facing east. Again, knowing that the true prime directives. And I was saying that the water came from on the right side, on the south side. So again, this is letting us know these little small things. They may seem like nothing, but it leads to great things. And this is an understanding that I've gotten. I know that the world has messed up the maps, and I'm not saying this is 100% accurate either, because I know the Mercator map, the one that I'm using here, is kind of false. Well, is false, but with a little bit of wisdom and orienting things, it gives us a better understanding, even when we're reading the scriptures, and to let you know again, they're messing around with things. They're turning things. East was at the middle, right? And now, east was at the top, and now they turn it and put east at the middle and north at the top. Again, taking a look here, we can see Jerusalem is Middle Earth. This is the Mediterranean Sea. Mediterranean means Middle Earth. We have all of our continents. And again, it does look like it's centered in the middle. Again, this is just a map for an example, but yes, they have messed around with the Most High's map. Again, when you're just looking at, cross-referencing the middle, this would be right here, half of the earth over here, half of the earth over there, and split right down the middle. This is not the equator that they have. The equator is actually much lower than that. But again, they're switching things around. They've even switched the directions. I'm almost finished here. But not even that. There's also, they've switched around the earth from being an earth-centered true scriptural system where the earth is the largest and the sun, moon, and stars are smaller than the earth and they move around the earth, to where now they have the sun-centered system called the solar system, or heliocentricity, the false solar system, where the sun is the gigantic and the earth is puny. Again, flip around things, making the earth that was the middle or the center, taking it out and putting the sun at the center. man, this whole monkey in the middle thing, as you can see, goes quite far, especially when we're dealing with specific things about the earth and calendars as well. So this should give us a good understanding that a lot of things have been played around with. And finally, we're getting to this area of pick a 28-year cycle, any 28-year cycle, because they like to play around with time. Now, a lot of people don't fully know how this calendar operates, but the Gregorian calendar is the calendar used in most parts of the world, and it was introduced in October 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th, who was the Bishop of Rome. So the calendar that we use today is a Roman Catholic calendar, right? Coming from other paganism back then. But this when they changed it, this was the Julian calendar, which it got switched to the Gregorian calendar. And when they changed it, on October 1582, on the Julian calendar, it was Monday the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. And then when the calendar changed, they kept the weekly cycle. They didn't interrupt the weekly cycle. And that's important to know because people think that when the calendar came in, it interrupted the weekly cycle. They did is they changed the dates. It went from Thursday the 4th to Friday the 15th and then carried on. And that's how they introduced their calendar. So when people say that the calendars, they messed up the weekly cycle, you can see here that it wasn't messed up at all. But not only that, I want to let you know something. This calendar, when it was introduced in 1582, it was in the middle of Jah's 28-year cycle. Now, many people wouldn't know this because they're not aware of Jah's 28-year cycle. But this is from calendar 1 in the year 1569 AD, which is equivalent to the creation year 5769. This is a 28-year cycle from 1569 to 1596. We have just sabbatical years, but we also have the Gregorian years with their leap year. And when we look at the year 1582, when the Gregorian calendar came into play, we see that it's in the middle of Jah's 28-year cycle. That's what number 14 is. It's in the middle, right? And that's when it was introduced. So there's a lot of middle things going on here that, is not a coincidence at all, family. Too much, evidence. But I know that many people, because they never heard of these things, it may seem like a farce to them. But these things can be proven, in the world, and we're proving it right here, right now. You see, another aspect as I finish off on this is probably my last calendar, and probably another 3 minutes. Another aspect here I want to talk about is that, you might not know about it, but I speak about the 28-year cycle that has 10,227 days. Now, this is an amount of days that's in the Gregorian calendar as well, with their 28-year cycle, and it keeps everything in line. All the seasons, the equinoxes, the solstices, all of that on the Gregorian calendar stays perfectly in line, and that's why the lunar calendars have to adjust to it with their 13-month year every so often, because it's pretty accurate, because it copies Jah's 28-year cycle, as you can see. But notice here again a flip around of the numbers. 7 times 4 gives us 28. There's 7 years up here before you get to the 7th year, a sabbatical year, and 4 of them, and you get 28. But the Gregorian calendar, they flip it around, kind of switching up that, sort of like the middle thing, but not exactly, but it's a flip around. 4 times 7, and they have their regular 365-day year, and every 4th year it's a leap year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, they know the math. Again, this is all about the truths that we're professing here. So I hope you've gotten some understanding from this what I'm sharing today. Pick a calendar, any calendar, and that would probably be the top main calendar things that I think there's probably about 10 of them that are errors that a lot of people don't know about. But if we don't get those things straight, we can go in the wrong direction. I want to thank you for listening in, and I really appreciate it. That's the end of that lesson. I want to give all praise to the Most High Jah and His Son Jahoshua, Yah and Yahoshua, Yahusha, Yahawashai, for life, health, and strength, and also for the mercy, for dying for our sins. and also for strengthening us and opening up our understanding about these truths. May the Most High continue to strengthen you and give you His Spirit to overcome the flesh and the things in your life and the evil of this world and all the demons that are out there as well. Keep those commandments as best as you can. Starts from the mind, starts with faith and love. So love the Most High, keep His commandments, His festivals and statutes. Don't let anybody trick you with the 7-day Sabbath or seasons. And subscribe and like if you found this information helpful for you. And don't forget to check us out. On Sabbaths, we'll be having a countdown to the new year for the next 5 Sabbaths. We're online every Sabbath from 4 till 6. Bless up. Bless up, Brother John. Enough respect. Sister Andrea, one love. Thank you. Thank you for sitting in. It's good that you keep sharp, and it also keeps the fire burning. Appreciate it. All right. I'm going to be clicking out unless there's any other comments, questions, or anything. I'll wait a second. Yes, Sister, praise Jah. All right, take care. One love.